Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k Tyranids. Now in today's video, it's going to be quite a long one. We're going to be doing an index tier list for all the Tyranid units. We're going to be going through every single unit that's available currently in this index, giving it a rating or giving it a tier list rather. D is the bottom tier, S is the top tier. Yeah, we're going to be going through all of them. Now of course this is just my personal opinion. If you've got a different opinion, put it down in the comments down below. There's no problem with that. Also shout out to Raging Stormwing as well as Rift and Jar Azist of course for assisting me with this tier list today. So let's get into it and we're going to start us off in D tier. Now in fact before I do begin, the actual tier groups themselves, they are alphabeticalized, so they're not actually in an order in terms of the actual tier, but these are all the units that are going to be within a certain tier group, for example. So you'll get what I mean in a moment. So let's begin with D tier. So the first one we've got today is Harpy. Now Harpy is one of our flyers. It does have the aircraft keyword, but it also has the hover core rule. So therefore you can choose pre-game to put him into hover mode. There's not really much of an advantage to having it in aircraft, so I would just hover it, to be honest with you. Now, yes, you're going to be creating spore mines with this flyer. Yes, it's got a decent-ish range attacks. You've got the Stinger salvos. You've got the option of the twin heavy venom cannon or the twin strangleform cannon, both are blast and twin linked. But for what the points cost says, what we're saying, it is 230 points. I think that's a very expensive model. It's not going to be holding on to objectives because of course it's an aircraft. Yes, you can throw out some extra mortal wounds with the spine more spawn mine cysts, but realistically for that kind of points cost you could be getting something on the ground and something much better. If you want to go shooty, you've got options. If you want to go melee, you've got options. I don't think you need to go for this flying monster, not right now anyway. So Harpy is going in D tier. Another one of our aircrafts, and this one's the big one, the 4-draw one, is the Herodin. Now the Herodin costs 655 points, so that is an absolute arm and a leg in terms of your points cost. Now where do we go with this? I mean, it's toughness 10, it's got 30 wounds, it's got a 3+ armor save, no object control of course. You've got the option of hovering, you've got a method of throwing out mortal wounds. Your ranged attacks, you've got the 2 dire bio cannons, which are both 48-inch range, d6 plus 6, and that's each with blast. So that's 2 lots of blast there. But a lot of people seem to forget, if you've got 2 weapons that are the same and both of them have blast, that's going to be blast times 2. So bear that in mind. There's a lot of shots there. It's strength 10 minus 3 AP and 3 damage. It's going to be taking out Terminators for fun, don't get me wrong. And the actual melee attack, there's only 6 attacks. Even though it's strength 14 with d6 damage, realistically, you're not doing a great amount. I mean, you're doing okay in melee, I guess. But for 655 points, it is also a transport for 20 gargoyles or the winged Tyranid Prime. I don't think you need it. The gargoyles are absolutely rapid, and the Tyranid Prime, if you want to take that, he's also pretty quick. I wouldn't even bother, but you don't need to use it as a transport. But 655 points for all that, yeah, he's just too expensive to field at this current time, and of course he's one of those 4-draw models anyway, so you definitely got to take away points for that. So here's another one that is in D tier. Moving down the list, we've got the Hierophant, which is yet another one of our 4-draw options. This one's even more expensive. It's 810 points. So this is effectively the Tyranids Knight. It's the Tyranids Imperial Knight, effectively. So this is moving 12 inches. Toughness is 14. So a pretty tough thing. 2+ armor, 5+ invuln save, 30 wounds. Objective control is 12. So at least we've got some objective control now, whereas all the other ones were flyers so far, or aircrafts. You get a +1 to hit if a unit is battle shocked. Yep, who cares? It's not that often. And you can move over models as if they weren't there. Yeah, whatever, not that big of a deal. It is also, again, a transport, so you could stick 20 Tyranid infantry models on this transport if you wanted to do that. And you've got the Bioplasma Torrent. Let's check that out. It's got the assault ability, 12-inch range, 3d6, strength 7 minus 2 AP, 1 damage. I mean, that's a bit lackluster, to be honest with you. 855 points for that. No thank you. You also do have the 2 dire bio cannons, which are the same as the previous entry. They are d6 plus 6 with blast, 2 of them. Strength 10 minus 3 AP, 3 damage. That weapon I do like, and you've got 2 of them. If you're firing these at a unit of 5 Terminators as an example, D6 plus 6, and there's 2 of them. So that's what, 12 plus 7, that's 19, and then you've got the blast. That's about 21 shots against a 5-man Terminator unit. You're going to be hitting on 3s, you're going to then be wounded on 2s. What's that? You're probably going to kill like 5, 6. You kill the unit, in my opinion. You probably kill the unit. You then got the melee weapons, which are, they're okay. You've got 18 attacks in total, although 10 of them are just strength 5 minus 1 AP 1 damage. But the 8 of them, strength 20. That's a hefty amount of strength. D6 plus 1 damage. That seems weird when you've got strength 20. Only D6 plus 1 damage. But yeah, 800, what was it? 855? Not for me. No, it was 810, sorry. 810 points, not for me at all. No. Next, unfortunately, we've got yet another aircraft in here. They just don't seem to have got these aircraft models right so far. Maybe it's just not for Tyranids, maybe it's for the entire 40k game, but for the Tyranid ones, I think they kind of suck. So this one is the Hive Chrome, very similar to Harpy in terms of statistics. You get a +1 to the hit roll against Fly, which, you know, that's okay, I suppose, it's okay. The Drawl Cannon, strength 6, minus 1 AP, 1 damage, you've got this 2d6 shots, automatically hitting. Stinger Salvos, the Tentaclids as well. All in all, it's just not doing a lot, and again, we go back to the original point when we were talking about with Harpy. You're not holding objectives because it's got OC 0, so no objective holding, no primaries, some of the secondaries it can't be doing. Really, it's just a bit of a distraction. If it had a high damage output, then, you know, you'd understand, but it doesn't. It doesn't. So really, it's another one of those options that is going to go in the D tier. On to one of the spores, the Mucilid Spores. 45 points for 1, 90 points for 2. You get 2 in a unit. They've got Deep Strike. Units can't start and end an advanced move within 6. Now, the wording there is start or end their advanced move, but they can still advance sort of through them. It's just the start and the ending part. Floating Death, you can explode and throw out mortal wounds. Realistically, you don't need to take these. You can just use Spore Mines with your Biovores. I mean, you can actually create the Mucilid Spores with the... Is it the Fortification? Let me just double check. The Spore Assist does... Yeah, the Spore Assist is in fact... has an ability to create these Mucilid Spores. But even the Spore Assist isn't exactly something that you're going to be selecting. But yeah, another dead model for me, another dead unit. I wouldn't be selecting these Spores. There was an occasion, I think it was the end of 9th edition, where these things were actually really good to spam. But yeah, at this moment, no. Another one, we've got the Scythed Herajul. Now this is another Forge World. Forge World don't seem to be doing very well with Tyranids. 305 points, so another very expensive monster. And it's not doing a great deal. Let's check it out, It's tough, 12-inch tough, 12-inch movement, toughness 12, 2+ armor. That's okay. There's no invuln save there, but a 2+ armor, it's alright. Now it comes with the Bioacid Spray and the Siren Talons. The Bioacid Spray is 3d6 amount of hits, strength 6 minus 2 AP and 1 damage. So it's basically an anti-infantry melee monster, realistically. You can declare a charge in a turn that it's fallen back. And the Herajul Siren Talons, you've got 10 attacks with them at strength 14, minus 2 AP, D3 plus 3 damage. Now the actual melee side of the profile is pretty good, to be honest with you. But 305 points. Why would you spend 305 points? I don't think I ever would. You've got the... What have you got? The Horror Specs is 125. So you get 2 of them. And that's only 250 points. So you've actually got some change out of that. And you've got 2 different monsters there. You can even go as far as Screamer Killers, which aren't as good as the Horror Specs. The Screamer Killers, just trying to find them. They're 180. So you couldn't quite get 2 of those. They're probably too overpriced as well, to be honest with you. But yeah, the Scythed Herajul, again, it's Forge World. It's not for me, that one. Not for me. That's going in D tier. Next, we've got Spore Mines. Now, just bear this in mind. This is just purely Spore Mines as an individual unit. This isn't Spore Mines that have been created by other units, such as Biovores. That's a whole different ballgame. This is just if you were building a list, would you spend points on taking Spore Mines, which are 50 points for 3 models or 100 points for 6 models? Would you actually spend the points? No, you wouldn't, is the honest answer. You would get the Biovores for... What are the Biovores now? Keep changing the prices, don't they? The Biovores are 65 points each, and instantly you're creating one. So yeah, spore mines, not for me. I don't think you need to spend points on them at all. Yes, they're throwing out extra little mortal wounds here and there. Yes, they could be used as a screening unit. Yes, they can be doing little actions. Yes, they can score behind enemy lines. But realistically, you may as well be firing them out from a biovore. Yes, they do have deep strike, in fact. That is another thing, and they've got these really small bases, so you can use them quite effectively. But you've got better options. You've got like Lictor, for example. A Lictor can do stuff like that. You've got, again, the biovore. We keep mentioning the biovore. You wouldn't need to spend points on spore mines. The spore assist, which we mentioned already earlier, this is what creates the Euclid spores. This is our fortification, so it's not going to be moving. It is staying stationary. Now it's got this weird unique rule within its ranged weaponry, which is called Hive Defenses. So I'll just read this out because I didn't actually spot this until doing this video. In fact, each time an enemy unit is set up or ends a normal move, advance or fallback move within range of this weapon, which is 24 inches, if that enemy is eligible to be a target of these attacks, the bearer can shoot with this weapon at that unit as if it was our shooting phase. And you can do so up to 4 times per phase, which is quite interesting. Now this is only a 5-shot weapon. You're hitting on 4, strength 5, minus 1 AP, 2 damage. But you could be doing this 4 times per phase in any normal, advance or fallback move. It doesn't necessarily say in the movement phase, because some units can do a normal move in the shooting phase as an example. So yeah, that could be quite a lot of shots for free. I just thought it was quite an interesting rule. Toughness 10, wounds 3, no, toughness 10, 3 armor, wounds 10, sorry. And you can create Euclid spores. I mean, everything sounds cool. You're creating spores, you've got these high defense mechanisms with the shooting attacks. It's not moving, it's got no OC, and it's 145 points. Yeah, that's expensive, isn't it? A little bit too expensive for me. Another monster within the D tier, we've got the Toxicrin. Now we did a video on this maybe a month ago, maybe a bit longer than that. Somewhere along those lines. And the Toxicrin, well, it was a bit of a letdown. I thought it was going to be something a bit more special this edition. It's 200 points and yes, it's anti-infantry 2+ at range and in melee. So it can do some work, but 200 points, again, the horror specs is 125. Why would you pay 200 points for something like this? It does have additional abilities, but what doesn't realistically? Everything's got abilities, right? I can't see past it being a D tier. Maybe it scrapes into C, but realistically, I'm not taking it. Tyranid Warriors, the melee variant this is, so not the range weapons, the melee variant, because they've divided these up now. Now, for whatever reason, these are actually more expensive than the ranged Tyranid Warriors. These are 90 points for 3, the range ones are 70 points for 3. Now, what do you get with the melee variant? Of course, they've got Synapse, so I mean, that's the same as the range ones. And in the fight phase, they get to choose one of these abilities. It's either going to be the Aggression Imperative to reroll hit rolls of a 1, or the Preservation Imperative to be rerolling saving throws of a 1. So yeah, you're going to add a little bit more resiliency, or a bit more effective in terms of your hit rolls. But what are the bioweapons that it's got? What is the difference here? Twin linked, 6 attacks per model, weapon skill 3+, potentially rerolling 1s if you choose that. Strength 5, minus 2 AP, 1 damage. 1 damage. That's not exactly great. I mean, if you are to be taking melee units such as this, you've probably got better options. For 90 points, in fact, that's 30 points a model. I think you've just got better options there. Winged Tyranid Prime. This is the last one in the D tier. This is the new model for this edition. You can pair these with those melee Tyranid Warriors, or the ranged Tyranid Warriors if you like. And also you can opt to take them with the gargoyles. So they provide sustained hits 1 to the units. Now with the gargoyles, you don't want them in combat, so you're going to be providing their ranged attacks with sustained hits 1. But realistically, the gargoyles, they're doing a bit of damage, to be fair to them, but I'd just rather take more gargoyles. This thing is 80 points. I don't think you need to add this kind of character to a gargoyle unit. I mean, all you're really doing is adding Synapse potentially. That's probably it. You don't need to take them with warriors. In fact, I'm not even taking warriors. And the other ability, it's got Death Blow. On a 4+, it can stand up and fight before being removed. I mean, what's it even doing? It's got 6 attacks. It does fight upon death though on a 4+, but that again relates to being in melee. Again, your gargoyles don't want to be in melee. so the pairing doesn't work for me. And I think you've got a better option in terms of characters that fly. For example, the Parasite of Mortrex, I'd rather take that than the Winged Tyranid Prime. That Parasite, we'll get onto him later in this video, but there's a lot more defense mechanisms to keeping that up and running, whereas this Winged Tyranid Prime doesn't really have anything. What is it? Toughness 5, 4 up save, 6 wounds, no invuln. That's it. Great. Not for me. Not for me. Let's move into the C tier, because that's all the dead units in my opinion. The C tier, we're starting to ramp it up slightly. They still aren't the best optimal picks for competitive play, but they are picks that some of you may like. I've seen from some of the comments that a few of you guys like these kind of units. But we're going to start us off with the Barbed Herajul. Now this, we've already spoke about one of the Herajuls, that was the Scythed Herajul. This one is the ranged one, the ranged variant, which again, it's 305 points. A little bit pricey. It's got the biocannons, it's 2 of them in fact, with blast, d6 plus 3 attacks. With blast, so times 2. Strength 9 minus 2 AP, 2 damage. So it is shooting infantry models off the table. And even in melee, it's actually okay. It's got 8 attacks, strength 14, minus 2 AP, d3 plus 3 damage. So it's only 2 attacks less than the Scythed Herajul, even though that's meant to be the melee option. But you swapped out the bio acid spray for these 2 biocannons. So yeah, there's definitely, this is the reason why this is in C tier and the Scythed Herajul is in D tier, because this one is just a lot better. Even though they're the same points value, it doesn't really make sense. But realistically, I'm taking Zoanthropes, I'm taking an Exocrine, Tyrannofex. This is 305 points, don't really need it. Now they've also got this ability where you're actually suppressing enemy units. As soon as they get hit by one of these attacks, and you've got d6 plus 3 with blast times 2, there's a load of attacks. So as soon as your opponent gets hit with one of these, then they're suppressed. And it's going to be a -1 to their hit rolls from the start until the start of the next turn effectively. But it's only one unit, you can't be split fire with 2 weapons, it is going to be one unit that has been hit. But yeah, 305 points, a little bit too expensive. I'm not saying it's a bad unit, I think you can just use your points more effectively, but if you do use it, I think it would do okay. I think you're just hurting yourself though in terms of your actual points for the rest of your army list. Hive Guard are next, unfortunately. These guys have had their ups and downs throughout the editions. The problem with these is they went up in points, didn't they? The points went up to 100 points for 3, or was it always 100 points? It's 100 points for 3, 200 for 6, and they do have the indirect fire with heavy. So the indirect is normally a -1 if they're actually using the indirect, and heavy will be a +1, so they effectively can stay on their 4+ ballistic skill. Potentially just use heavy and go to a 3+, but it is only strength 5 minus 1 AP and 1 damage. It's a 5+ to hit if you're using Overwatch, and in fact it'll be a 4+ if you're on an objective marker. So that's actually not bad, you're effectively hitting on your standard ballistic skill at that point. That's pretty good. You've also got the option of the shock cannon, which is anti-vehicle 2+, but there's no dead wounds or anything like that. The damage is 3, but you only get 2 shots per model. So if you've got a full unit of 6 of them, that's going to be 12 shots. You're hitting on 3s, that's going to be 8 hits. From your 8 hits, you're going to do quite well there. I'm just trying to do the maths in my head here. Because you've got anti-vehicle 2+, you're probably going to get 6. And it's only -1 AP, but the damage is 3. It's a high damage, but it's very situational because A, it's only 24-inch range, and these things are probably at the back, so they're going to have to move forward. B, you need to come up against vehicles. That isn't always the case. I mean, if you're playing a mirror match against Tyranids, you're not coming up against vehicles, so it needs to be vehicle-specific lists. And even if there is 1 or 2 vehicles, once you've popped them, they're gone. Then what the Hive Guard actually doing? So unless you're playing Astra Militarum or something like that, they're not actually that great. They're not really fighting in combat either, so that's why they're going to be in C tier today. Next we've got the Neuro Tyrant, which is another one of the new ones for this edition. The Neuro Tyrant is a character monster that can fly. It's also a psyker. Now what's good about the Neuro Tyrant? Let's try and start with something positive. They can go with Neurogaunts or Tyrant Guard. Okay, fair enough. They've got a Psychic Scream range attack, which ignores cover. It's a torrent, so it's 2d6. You're automatically hitting strength 5 minus 1 AP and 2 damage. 2 damage is okay. It's got Synapse and Shadow in the Warp and all that kind of stuff. Now the abilities, it's got 3 abilities which is quite unique. Node Lash. It's a +1 to the hit roll if you're leading the unit, and if the unit is, if the target unit is battle shocked, it's +1 to the win roll. Not always the case, very unlikely in fact, but at least you're getting a +1 to the hit roll for potentially Tyrant Guard or Neurogaunts. Yeah, whatever. Psychic Terror is a -1 to battle shock test when you use Shadow in the Warp. It's only a once per battle thing. and synaptic relays, which is pretty cool. You can get 2 friendly Tyranid units within 12 inches in your own command phase, and then they're always considered to be within synapse range, so they can bugger off and do their own thing. Maybe you want to be targeting Hormagaunts or something because they could move and advance and all that kind of stuff. They're going quite quickly, and they're going to still be providing synapse to other units, so that's okay. A 4+ invulnerable save to go alongside their 4+ armor save. They're only toughness 8, but that does match the toughness of the Tyrant Guard. So that is a good combination to have, having Tyrant Guard. Realistically, I'm not really taking these. Some of you are, I'm personally not. But they're in C tier because, well, there's a severe lack of damage from this Tyrant. A severe lack of damage. And the points cost for this thing is... Bum 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 bum. Drum roll. 105 points. It's fairly cheap, to be fair. It's fairly cheap. It's not quite D tier because of how cheap it is. It's going to go into C tier. Another new one, the Psychophage. Now, I originally put this in D tier, and I was convinced to bump it up a little bit. So we're going to get into why now. So first of all, the Psychophage points cost. While I'm on the points page, I may as well get this here. 125 points. 125 points. That's okay. I mean, a Horror Specs is also 125 points. But what is the Psychophage actually doing? First of all, 5+ for no pain, that's good. Second of all, the Psychoclastic Torrent, which is just another one of these torrents that are anti-infantry. I'm not really that bothered about that, to be honest with you. That's the ranged attack. The melee attack, though, is kind of where it's at. You've got the Talons and the Betentacled Maw, Anti-Psycho 2+ and Devastating Wounds. So that combination together is quite nasty against specific units. So if you go up against a Psycho unit, maybe you're playing against Grey Knights, maybe you're playing against Thousand Suns, mirror match against Tyranids, Eldari. As soon as you get into a fight with a Psycho unit, any wound roll of a 2+ becomes a critical wound. And as we know, that will become a devastating wound. So the damage will literally turn into mortal wounds. There's no armor save, there's no invuln save, and each one is 2 damage. Now it actually gets d6 + 1 attacks to begin with, and there are ways of adding 1 to the hit roll and 1 to the wound roll as well. You're also providing a 6+ for no pain save within 6 inches as an aura, which adds a little bit of an extra defense mechanism. You could add this to things such as venom ropes. There's all sorts of different combinations you can add to create this defensive, line of defense, I suppose, against all your models, your monsters, your gaunts. So it's one of those models that's hurting Psychers and also giving a bit of defense. But if you're not going up against Psychers, this thing realistically isn't doing anything in melee. Anti-Psycho 2+ doesn't come into play. Dev Wounds does, but with only d6 + 1 attacks, you need a 6 now to wound rather than a 2+ to wound. It's not doing anything realistically. That's why it's only going to be in C tier today, but if you're going up against Psychers, this is definitely an S tier unit. Ripper Swarms is next. I actually quite like Ripper Swarms. I wanted to push these up a little bit, but I was reminded in the Discord about Spore Mines. That's why they're down here. But let's talk about the Ripper Swarms for a moment. Ripper Swarms have got no objective control, which kind of sucks. They've also got, how much are they? They're 35 points for 3, 70 points for 6. They're kind of slow, moving only 6. They've only got toughness 2. They've got 6+ armor. 4 wounds a base, which is okay, I suppose. But mainly they've got deep strike, so it means they can come in 3 bases. They can start doing things such as behind enemy lines, investigate signal, deploy teleport homers. They can do those actiony kind of secondary objectives, even area denial. They can be the ones to do that. Or they can also be used as a screening unit as well. Maybe in our own deployment zone in the corners, you can hide a few so they won't be seen, but they can also be screening out deep strike. They could also be screening out the Terran effects, the exocrines. So they've got multi-purpose. It's just a shame that in terms of the actual scoring, we could just get a Biobor, throw out some Spore Mines within 48-inch range, and they can do that kind of job with the actions. So unfortunately, that's why they're down in this tier group. In terms of the actual damage output, they're not doing anything realistically. At least they're halving the objective control of enemy units, but they've got to be within engagement range to do that, so the likelihood is they're going to die. So it's going to be kind of like, yeah, you've halved it, but then they're dead. So they're okay. They're in a C today. They're in a C group, and we're going to move on to the Turvagon. Now, the Turvagon, we've done her profile. I think it was one of the first ones we did for 10th edition, actually. She's quite tanky. She's got toughness 11, 2+ armor, 16 wounds, no invulnerable save, and she can be targeted from the get-go. That's a big problem. Even if you put the enhancement on her to give her the feel no pain save, she can still be targeted. Whereas in the previous edition, if she had Termagants around, she basically had Lookout Sir. Now she is going to be spawning more Termagants, which is pretty cool because you can use her ability as well as the stratagem Endless Multitude. No, that's the keyword, isn't it? Let's have a quick look. Endless Swarm, that's the one. The Endless Swarm, so you can kind of stack them to be bringing back multiple models of Termagants, which is kind of good. And she gives Termagants within 6 lethal hits. If you're going to be using those Devourers potentially, then yeah, lethal hits, not too bad. In terms of her own damage output, Stinger Salvos, very light anti-infantry. Massive Crushing Claws, if you're taking that, strength 12, -3 AP, D6+1 damage. You're hitting on 4s and you've only got 4 attacks, not great. And the massive Scything Talons, at least you've got 2 profiles there. Only really good for Gauntless. I would potentially, if I was doing Termagant lists, I wouldn't take more than 1, because you can only put the Feel No Pain save enhancement on one of them. So I would do it on the one and not bother with the second one, unfortunately. Yeah, if she wasn't able to be targeted early, I think she'd be up in the rankings, but unfortunately you just target her from turn 1. And yeah, once you've got rid of her, then the little bugs are kind of screwed. Next we've got the Tyranid Warriors. This is the range side of it now. So these are only 70 points for 3, rather than the 90 for 3, which is with the melee variant. And with their range bioweapons, they've got the options. They've got Devourers, Death Spitters, Spine Fist. You can add the Barbed Strangler or the Venom Cannon, or in fact both. If you've got a 3-man unit, one can have the Barbed Strangler, one can have the Venom Cannon, and that's for free. Their abilities, they can fall back and shoot or fall back and charge, which is okay. They've got Synapse. In combat, they've got 5 attacks at strength 5, -1 AP, 1 damage, which isn't actually that far off what the melee variant of these guys do. The melee variant have 1 extra attack and 1 extra bit of AP, and they've got the ability to potentially re-roll hit rolls of a 1. So yeah, I would definitely take these over the melee variant if I was to take any Tyranid Warriors. I don't think I really have a need for them right now. If you want to shoot stuff, you've got Zones Ropes. Just take your Zones Ropes. If you want to go infantry based shooting, there's no reason to not take Zones Ropes realistically. So I just max out with them. Then we come on to our Tyrannocyte, which is effectively the Tyranid drop pod. Now the Tyrannocyte, it gives you the ability to come in turn 1, like a Space Marine drop pod effectively. And of course they're coming in 9 inches away from enemy models. But getting a unit in turn 1, in fact the transport capacity, let's go through that. 20 infantry Tyranid units, 1 Tyranid monster with wounds of 12 or less. And if it's an infantry model with the wounds characteristic of more than 1, they're going to take up the space of 3 models. So you've got a lot of space in there realistically. But 12 wounds or less, what are we talking about here? The Screamer Killers, Carnifex, you wouldn't really put a Carnifex in there. What else we got? The Trigon and the Morlock, they don't really need it, but they've got 14 anyway. The Horusvex has got 14, so he's not going in. The Malcept has got 14, so he's not going in. So basically all the big stuff isn't going to be going in. So now you've got to start looking at the smaller stuff. The smaller stuff such as Hive Guard, maybe. In fact, let's go back a step. The Hive Tyrant and the Swarm Lord, they've got the capability because they've only got 10 wounds. They could go in. That's a way of getting them up the battlefield turn 1. I mean, they're moving 8 inch anyway. I think for 105 points, you don't necessarily need it. But there will probably be ways of using this that I'm not aware of. And once we do actually get a codex, which isn't what we're talking about today, but once we do get a codex, there'll be probably even more ways of using this. I just haven't come across them at this moment in time. So yeah, that's why they're in this tier group at this moment anyway. Finally, in the C tier, we've got the Winged Hive Tyrant. The Winged Hive Tyrant unfortunately took a bit of a drop this edition. Now he's 195 points, which is probably the main problem. You may as well, in my opinion, just take a Hive Tyrant or even a Swarm Lord. He does have the same ability as the Hive Tyrant, Will of the Hive Mind, to be able to get a free strat use for a unit within 12, which is kind of cool. And the Paroxysm ability, you're going to be throwing out mortal wounds, yeah, whatever. You've got options with the war gear, range weapons, melee weapons. You've got options there. You're a character, so you can put on the enhancements if you wanted to. You've got Deep Strike, Shadow in the Warp and Synapse, and an M1 save to go with your 2+ armor with 10 wounds, toughness 9. Unfortunately, he's not as tough as the Hive Tyrant. The Hive Tyrant is toughness 10. Even though the Hive Tyrant is slower, I think I would rather have the toughness. And he's also not a leader, whereas the Hive Tyrant can go with the Tyrant Guard if you wanted to. But yeah, for me, I don't think I don't have much success with the Winged Hive Tyrant. I mean, I didn't, even when he was good back in, was it 8th or 9th? Might have been early 9th. Even when he was good back then, I didn't have much success with him. Might have been 8th actually. But to me, he's just getting worse and worse. Worse and worse. So I believe that is all of C tier. So let's move into B tier, I suppose. B tier, we're going to start us off with another character model. One of my personal favourites. I've got a bit of a soft spot for the Broodlord. Yeah, the Broodlord, the Genestealer leader, if you like. Now, the Broodlord costs us 100 points on the nose. 100 points. He's got the Scout's 8 ability, or Scout's 8-inch ability. He's got the 4+ armor save with his toughness 5, 6 wounds, 4+ M1 save. He's going to be giving devastating wounds to the Genestealers, and he's also got the Hypnotic Gaze psychic power. So it's a -1 to hit for enemy units that are in engagement range of your Broodlord. Now, is he doing a lot of damage? He's doing an okay amount. He's got 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, dev wounds with twin links. It would be nice if it was like anti-infantry 2+ or something like that, but yeah, we're going to have to wait for, you have to rely on 6s to wound, which you're not going to get that many, to be honest with you, even if it is twin linked and re-rolling. Strength 6, -2 AP, 2 damage. It's okay. He's a cheap character that can do little actions, and he's going to be running with Genestealers. But yeah, the Scout 8-inch movement thing can be useful. It's kind of similar-ish to having Infiltrate, which is what they used to have, the Genestealers. I don't know what's better, in fact. Is Infiltrate better than Scout? It probably is, realistically, isn't it? But that's what he's got. I think he's okay. He's going to be very low B. He's not going to be high B. He's definitely more closer to C, if anything. The Hormagaunts are the next units. I believe we've done these only recently, in fact. 70 points for 10, 140 points for 20, and they're able to declare a charge in the turn that they advance. So you move 10 inches, because they're pretty quick, you will then advance, D6, and then you can make a charge move. So these things are fantastic for tying up enemy units, or they can be a screen, but they're more expensive than the screens that you could use, like the Termagants or Ripper Swarms. So realistically, they're not going to be a screen, although they can do that job. I think you've got better options for screening units. Realistically, they're more about tying up units, and stealing objectives is the main thing here. So you jump onto a unit that's on an objective. We've got OC 2 per model. We're going to have 10 or 20 bugs there that they've got to chew through, and the likelihood is we're going to hold the objective and they're not, and by the time they got through us, it could be turn 3, turn 4, like the game's going to be closed by that point. So they've got a use, and I like them. I think they're pretty good. I don't have the new models. I've got the old models that didn't stand up right, so I've never really used them much in 9th edition because I had to try to keep them upright and they just kept falling down, and it would really annoy me, so I didn't even bother with them in the end. But overall, they look cool. They've got a new model coming, and they're pretty quick. They're pretty quick, so I quite like that. They're also battle lines, so you can take up to 6 of these in the units, and endless multitude, so you can be bringing them back as well with the stratagem. Next, we've got some more infantry to talk about, the Genestealers. Now, we just mentioned the Broodlord. This is the unit that he would be leading. If you were to take the Genestealers, you would take them with the Broodlord, of course. Now, Genestealers are 90 points for 5 or 180 for 10. You can't take them in 20s anymore, unfortunately. They've also got the Scout 8-inch moves. They're very similar to the Broodlord, in fact. It would be weird if they didn't. They get to reroll wound rolls of a 1, and if their target is on an objective marker, they get to reroll all the wound rolls instead. Now, their weapon doesn't come with anything, but of course, if you've got the Broodlord there, he will give them devastating wounds. So if they've got 4 attacks per Genestealer and you've got 10 of them, that's potentially 40 attacks if you can get them all in. Hitting on 2s, quite nice. Strength 4 only, that's not so nice. -2 AP, 1 damage with devastating wounds. It's not too bad of repairing. They do also have an invulnerable save of a 5+. So they're 5+ armor, 5+ invuln. Only T4, but they've now got 2 wounds, which makes them a little bit more resilient, a little bit more durable. 2 wounds, they used to only have 1 in the old edition. I think that's a really cool change. That's what puts them in B tier for me. If they were still 1 wound models, then I'd probably put them in C tier, but because they've got 2, B tier for me today. The Mailed Scepter next, 165 points for this psychic model or monster with Synapse, and of course Shadowing the Warp. T11, 3+ armor, 4+ invulnerable save, which is quite cool. 14 wounds, so quite durable. Now in 9th edition, this thing used to have a ton of outlay in terms of the mortal wounds. It still has a bit, but it now comes from their actual weaponry rather than the abilities. The ability itself is just a -1 to the hit roll for enemies and potentially a -1 to wound. Don't like the ability at all. It's an aura, but don't like it. Raid attack, Psychic Overload. You've got D6 plus 3 attacks with Blast. So what's that on average? You're talking about 6 or 7, maybe 8 attacks, maybe 9 attacks. It depends on the unit, I suppose, but you're going to get a fair amount of attacks on average. And it's strength 10 -2 AP, and the damage is a flat 3. So it's doing a bit of work there. It's only 18-inch range though, so you're going to have to get a little bit close to use this. But when you do so, you've got the melee options here with the melee weapons, which is the massive Siren Talons with the strike or the sweep profiles. The strike profile, strength 9 -2 AP, D6 plus 1 damage, so it can do a bit of work against even Terminators. And the sweep profile, even that's got damage too, so even that can take out intercessors and things like that. So it can defend itself. Don't forget the -1 to the hit roll, so it can defend itself even more. The invuln save as well on top of that. I think it's just a fairly resilient model, and 165 points is okay. It's reasonable, I think. It's reasonable. Next we've got one of the big monsters. It's the Morlock. Now the Morlock has always had their unique ability of tunneling in. They seem to change this in every edition. This time it's Terror from the Deep. You can set this up with Deep Strike, and when you do, units within 12 inches on a 2/3/4, they're going to be suffering D3 mortal wounds, and on a 5+, it's 3 mortal wounds. So that potentially has a lot of damage output. You probably catch a couple of units within that 12-inch range. You could get more, maybe 3, maybe 4 units. You don't know. That's not too bad, and in fact, if you do get a 5+, they're going to be suffering 3 mortal wounds and a battle shock test, which is that's not too bad at all. It moves 10, toughness 10, 14 wounds, 3 up armor, no invuln. The melee profile is the Warlock Siren Talons, 16 attacks, strength 8 -2 AP, 1 damage. So they're only anti-infantry attacks, light infantry. You're going to be wounded on 3s, no 2s even, it's strength 8. You're going to be wounded on 2s against that kind of profile. If you're going up against toughness 5, you're only doing 1 damage a turn, but it has 16 attacks, so you may still get through a few. Again, Terminators, elite infantry, you may get through 1 or 2 of them. You have to be really lucky to get with a few of them, I suppose. Then the extra attack, which is the Dispensable Claw. The Dispensable Jaw, third time lucky. Anti-infantry 4+ with dead wounds. It's only 1 attack. If you hit with it, then you get the 4+. It's damage 3. You've got a chance of removing a Terminator with that. But I like the ability, Terror from the Deep. It's throwing out mortal wounds. It's becoming a big threat to your opponent. They have to deal with it all of a sudden. It's now in your opponent's back lines or somewhere important. It's just thrown out a load of mortal wounds, and it's going to charge in our next turn. So they need to deal with it. So that's why I would put it up in the B tier. I don't think it's as good as a Trigon, and we'll talk about the Trigon later in this video. Next is the Parasite Mortrex. We've done this video only recently as well. It's a flying character model with lone operative and stealth. It's got a lot of defense mechanisms to keep it up and running. It's only got OC1, bit annoying, but sometimes that's all you need. Now the Parasite Mortrex is 90 points. It can take an enhancement, and the likelihood is you take the Synaptic Linchpin because it doesn't actually have Synapse for whatever reason, but you can give it Synapse with enhancement for only 10 points. Not too bad. It does have Deep Strike, and it's also got the Parasite or Parasitic Infection to be creating Ripper Swarms. That's going to be linked to the melee weapon. It's got the 1 attack melee weapon, which is an extra attack, anti-infantry 3+, damage 3 as well. So once you do that, you can create Ripper Swarms. Now what I like about this model is I use it as a bait. I said this in the video we did. I use it as a bit of a bait because I would take some sort of melee monster. It could be a Horus Vex, it could be a Swarm Lord. You take something along those lines and run it up the battlefield, well, into the no man's land, and then you deep strike your Parasite Mortrex into an objective in the no man's land. Now, even though it's only got 1 OC, your opponent is going to have to deal with that. It can't be targeted unless it's within 12 inches because it's got the lone operative ability. And even if it was within 12, it's a -1 to hit because of stealth. You could get even more lucky, you could get it within a terrain feature or behind cover. So it's going to be quite hard to pick out. So your opponent is going to have to come forward in order to do so. But guess what's going to be lurking there? A Swarm Lord, a Horus Vex, something melee, something big is ready to pounce. So you're going to get that free charge move and then away you go. So I like to use it as a bit of a baiting option. It's quite annoying to get rid of as well. I mean, again, with those defense mechanisms of lone operative and stealth, it becomes quite an annoyance to get rid of for opponents. And that's why I think it's a good unit to take. And it's definitely better than the Winged Tyranid Prime as well. Pyrovores are next. They've got a new model this edition. I always get them mixed up, so hopefully I've got this the right way around this time. Is that a Pyrovore? Is that a Pyrovore? We'll never know, or you know, I won't. Pyrovores, they are 30 points, or 60 points, or 90 points, depending on how many you're taking. Take 1, 2, or 3 of them. Now these are effectively your sort of heavy flamery, well, they've got the flame spurt, haven't they? They're not moving quick, and they've not got a big range, only 12-inch range. They've not got any deep strike or anything, so they're going to be sitting on our own areas. Now you can advance with them. So yeah, I would use these as more of an Overwatch kind of unit on our own areas, in our own deployment zone. Maybe you can push them into the no man's land, but using Overwatch with them, you get D6 plus 1 attacks. You don't need to roll because it's auto hitting, so there's no 6s needed here. Strength 6, -1 AP, 1 damage. It's not a lot of damage, but when you've got 3 of them, it can be a bit of work. And they won't be using the benefits of cover, and you've also got Twin Linked associated with the Flame Spurt weapon. So you are re-rolling the wound rolls. It's okay in melee. I say okay, maybe it's not. It's pretty rubbish in melee actually. 2 attacks each, strength 5, no AP, 1 damage. I take that back. Something to watch out for though is a Deadly Demise 1. They can explode, and if there's a unit of them, you're going to be exploding into each other, so just watch out for that. It can happen. But yeah, I quite like them to sort of just sit back on my own objectives. They're quite easy to hide, well the old model was. I don't know how big the new model is, but they were easier to hide, and anything deep striking in, trying to charge into our home objective, they're getting flamed. They're getting flamed. Screamer Killers next. Now, I was tempted to put these down a bit. I was tempted to put these down to C tier, but they are still good. They're just expensive, aren't they? We know they're expensive, and we know we've got better options with the Horus Vex. Now, these guys are 180 points, probably about 50 points too much in my opinion. These were the nice new model. Their range attack is okay. D6 plus 3 attacks, strength 8 -2 AP, 1 damage with blast and assault. So you can actually advance with it, shoot, but then you're not going to be charging. But if you do go for the charge move, you got 10 attacks, strength 10 -2 AP, 3 damage. It's 10 strength, 10 attacks is actually quite nasty if you get onto the right unit. Again, Terminators are probably a good example. You're going to be wounding them on 2s. -2 is all you really need against those invuln saves, and yeah, each one that goes through removes a Terminator. That's good. I think the Horus Vex does the job better, although the Horus Vex has different damage output. I think they've got more attacks. We'll go through them in a bit anyway. But yeah, 180 points is just a bit too expensive. That's the main problem with the Screamer Killer. Even though the new model looks really cool, it's just got a problem in terms of the points. But yeah, I put it in B. It's still a good model. If you take it, it's still going to do good. It's still going to do you bits, just not quite A or S. Near the end of B tier, we've got the Termagants next, which are slightly cheaper than the Hormagaunts. These are only 60 points per unit of 10, whereas the Hormagaunts were, I'm just trying to remind myself, the Hormagaunts were 70 points, so slightly cheaper by only 10 points for the 10. So these would make a better screen just purely on points alone. If they're meat shields, you may as well be as cheap as possible. Now you've got the options of the ranged weaponry. You can either take the Flesh Borers or the Devourers or the Spine Fists. Each one of them has different profiles. I mean, the Flesh Borers have Assault, that's not bad. The Spine Fists have Assault and the Pistol and Twin Link, but they're slightly weaker. You only got Strength 3 with that, not Strength 5. And the Devourers, they're kind of middle of the road. You get 2 attacks, Strength 4, no AP, 1 damage. There's no AP on either of the weapons, but they've got a really cool ability which is Shulking Horrors. So once per turn, when an enemy unit ends its normal move, advance or forward, but move within 9 inches of this unit, if we're not in engagement range, we can make a normal move of up to D6. So if your opponent is lining up a charge against our Termagants, then we just go, hey, you know what, I'm going to step back a little bit, D6, maybe you roll a 4, move back 4 inches. That makes their charge move 4 inches more difficult. You could do it the other way around. If there's an objective maybe 3 inches away and you roll it, roll a 3, you can push these onto an objective in your opponent's turn. Bearing in mind these things have OC2, so potentially we're stealing objectives. Maybe it's going to relate to their secondaries for their turn. And also our command phase is coming up in the next turn, so therefore we could potentially be scoring victory points for our primaries. So it's a really cool ability, and that's probably why these guys are in B and not with the Hormagaunts in C. I think they were in C, weren't they? I prefer these guys, and they've also got a nice new model as well. They also do link to the Tervagon, but the Tervagon, if you got to take just one, no more than one. But yeah, that was a whole different unit. Don't worry about that too much. Finally, the last unit within B tier is the Von Ryan's Leapers. I've had to make sure I said that correctly because I always get that the wrong way around. It's not Von Lion's Reapers, it's Von Ryan's Leapers. I'm going to have to check that because the amount of times I've got this wrong is insane. Right, Von Ryan's Leapers. Is that what I just said? Von Ryan's Leapers. Yes, I did. Well done me. Round of applause. Now, what is the points cost for the Von Ryan's Leapers? 75 points for 3, 150 points for 6. Now they've got the Fights First ability, which is very cool. Infiltrators, which is also very useful. And Stealth for the -1 to hit. So they've got some nice defense mechanisms there. A 6+ invulnerable save to go along with their 4+ armor, 6+ invuln, whatever. I mean, I don't care too much for that. But they move 10 inches, which is pretty good. And they've got a toughness of 5. So they're pretty tough, pretty hard to kill. They fight first. They can also use Hero Intervention for free, even if you've already used that stratagem in that phase. Attacks wise, 6 attacks each at strength 5, -1 AP, 1 damage. All in all, I think that's a good unit. Infiltrate competitively is a useful ability. It's going to slow down your opposing players' units that are doing, turn 1 charges and stuff like that. If you've got infiltrate units in the way, that's great. Also, your opponent may also have infiltrate units, so these units can be blocking them out, especially if you deploy them first. Because they've got to deploy 9 inches away from our units, so it's kind of whoever goes first gets to take that area. But yeah, a good unit, definitely a B tier for me, and I like them. They're very similar to Lictors, but you get a whole group of these. You get 3 or 6, which is kind of cool. Right, so now we're getting on to the A tier, and we're going to start with the card effects. In this edition, they're only in units of up to 2, although we can have Old One-Eye leading the unit. They're 125 points per model, and there's a lot of different weapon options that you can take. You've got the Death Spitters with their Slimer Maggots, Devourers with the Brain Leech Worms, Heavy Venom Cannon, Stranglethorn Cannons, Crushing Claws, Carnifex Crushing Claws. They are, of course, monsters, and they're fairly resilient. Toughness 9, 2+ armor, 8 wounds. It's not mega resilient, but because you've got 2 of them, potentially 3 with Old One-Eye, that makes quite a difficult unit to break, and they could be your frontline unit, front and center, scary Carnifex models with all the different range options as well as the melee options. Now their Blistering Assault ability is quite unique, so when we're targeted at range after they've shot, if we've lost any wounds because of a result of those attacks, we can do this ability. You roll a d6, adding 2 to the result for each model in this unit. So you roll a d6, adding 2 to the result, and every model in this unit can move that distance, and we can even finish within engagement range if possible, which is pretty cool. It means in the fight phase, there's going to be a fight. So yeah, I quite like them. 125 points for 1. I like to take them with Old One-Eye, which is in fact in this A tier, so we're going to be talking about him not in the not too distant future. But yeah, A tier for me. Next we've got one of the unique epic hero characters, which is the Death Leaper. Now the Death Leaper did actually get a new model this edition, and he's only 80 points. Now we actually thought the Death Leaper was going to be leaving our faction. We thought, you know what, he's now dead, it's not going to happen. But we got the new model, which is pretty cool. So he's basically a Lictor, a character version of the Lictor. He's got precision, 6 attacks, weapon skill 2+, strength 7, -2 AP, 2 damage. Again, with precision, you can be taking out those characters. Maybe you've got assassination. Toughness 6 with a 4+ armor and 7 wounds, 4+ invulnerable save on top of that, but that's not all he's got in terms of defense. He's got the Infiltrator's ability, which isn't really a defense, but you can pop in your deployment. But you've got the Lone Operative ability, which is defense, so they need to be firing within 12 inches in order to target him. Stealth for the -1 to the hit roll, and fights first. If he does get charged, then at least he's going to be fighting first, potentially minimizing what's coming back our way. Every time he removes a character model, we gain a CP. situational I suppose. And Fear of the Unseen, you're worsening leadership characteristics of models by 1, and you can be potentially forcing additional battle shock tests. Now, this of course is going to be linking to Shadow in the Warp. Now he doesn't actually have this ability, but other units with Synapse and Shadow in the Warp, they will stack alongside this Fear of the Unseen aura because it's a -1 to their leadership. So more chance of them failing their battle shock. Now the only problem with this is the fact that he's an epic hero, so he can't be taking any enhancements. But he could be used as a little bit of an assassinator. I do prefer the Lictor, to be honest, they're a bit cheaper. But you can use this guy if you wanted to. Now unfortunately he can't be a Warlord, that's just one other slight thing. No Warlord, but he has an infantry, at the very least. Going down the list, we've got the Exocrine. Now I was unsure whether to pump this into the S tier or keep him in the A tier. I've gone with A, 135 points. He's definitely A+, he probably does deserve S to be honest, but I was unsure and I've gone with A for now. Toughness 10, 14 wounds, 3 up armor, symbiotic targeting, so you can effectively give a rerollable hit roll of a 1 army wide to a specific unit. The bioplasmic cannon is blast and heavy with d6 plus 3 attacks, strength 8 minus 3 AP, 3 damage. That's a nasty bit of kit there, 36-inch range on top of that. He fights okay, I mean he's only, I keep saying that don't I? I always look at the strength and damage, but then I come back to the attacks. There's only 3 attacks, strength 7, no AP, 2 damage. Yeah, it's actually not that great, so you want to be screening him off realistically. But the actual range output is pretty good, and the fact that he's buffing other units such as Zone Throats to be rerolling hit rolls of a 1, that's a mega bonus because Zone Throats are probably one of our best units. So definitely an A1, definitely an A tier unit, probably A+ for me. Next we've got the Lictor. The Lictor, we just kind of spoke about the Death Leaper a moment ago. Lictor is 75 points, so not that much cheaper in fact, only 5 points. Fights first, infiltrators, lone operative and stealth, very similar to the Death Leaper. Isn't a character, and every time he destroys a character he does get a CP, very similar to the Death Leaper in fact. 5+ inv, not a 4+. He's got 1 less wound, and he can use the Rapid Ingo stratagem for 0 command points. Now in fact, looking at this more and more, I've got the 2 data sheets together. I think the Death Leaper is actually better. I'm not sure why I said the Death Leaper was the worst unit. I think he's actually better. He is better, and there's only 5 points difference. I thought there was a bit more difference in terms of points, but there actually isn't. So yeah, you get an additional wound. He's character, so we can't take enhancements, but he's still a character. They've both got fights first, infiltrators, lone operative, stealth. One can use rapid ingress for free, which I don't really like. The other one's got the aura, and the actual weapons, they're exactly the same, Lictor, Claws and Talons. So for 5 points more, you're getting a little bit more. Gives away assassination, I suppose, but there's not much between them, so they're both in A. That's what I'm going to go with, they're both in A. Old One Eye is next. Old One Eye. 140 points, that's dirt cheap compared to what he used to be. He can be leading Carnifexes. Now he is an epic hero, so no enhancements here. It's a monster. Same statistics, I believe, as the Carnifexes, although were they toughness 8? This is now toughness 9. And 1 extra wound as well, I think. The toughness is actually the same, it's just the wounds. You've got an extra wound with Old One Eye. 5+4 no pain save though, which is pretty good. And you can get the entire unit to reroll hit rolls. So if he's leading the unit, which he would be, 2 Carnifex models, rerolling hit rolls, nice. And in each player's command phase, this guy regains D3 lost wounds. So not just yours, your opponent's as well. This one, for me, if you're taking Carnifexes, this guy is an auto-include. If you're taking Carnifexes. If you're not, then of course, he's not. That's why he's an A. He's fighting pretty good. He's got 2 different profiles, strike and sweep with the Wild One Eye's Claws and Talons. Strength 14 is the decent one with D6 plus 1 damage. And the anti-infantry one is 12 attacks, strength 6, minus 1 AP, 1 damage. That's all you really need. Perfect statistics for taking out light infantry units. I quite like Old One Eye. Again, you've got to take Carnifexes in order to make the most out of him. If you're not really going to take this guy. Maybe you would in fact on his own, because he's got the Feel No Pain save of a 5+, so he can do it on his own. He's still rerolling hit rolls of a 1 on his own as well. Although he does hit on 3s to start with, but hey ho, it's basically 2s, isn't it? No, it's rerolling hit rolls, sorry, it's not a +1. Would be nice if he was hitting on 2s. But I like Old One Eye, and he is in A. Now, the Trigon is next. The Trigon is actually pretty good. The Trigon is 180 points, so he is pretty expensive. Movement 10 inches, toughness 10, 3+ armor, 14 wounds, deep strike. He's got the similar weapons to the Morlock, in fact. But what I like is his ability, the subterranean tunnels. And this one is cool. So each time this model is set on the battlefield using Deep Strike, it can be set up basically within 3 inches horizontally of enemy models. So not 9, 3. If you do it within 3 and not within 9, you're not going to be eligible to charge. Now this is good for a few reasons. First of all, your opponent has to deal with this. Has to. At least with the Morlock, they probably did also have to, but there's a 9-inch gap. Whereas this thing is going to charge in its very next turn. But the second reason, and quite important, is if your opponent is on an objective, let's say they've got, I don't know, 5 Hell Blasters and they're on an objective, this thing pops up within 3 and his toes are on the objective. Now all of a sudden we've got objective control 4 on that objective marker. We've still got our ranged attacks to go, which is 6 shots at 12-inch range, sustain hits 2. So we could potentially be removing some more. You can remove even more from other parts of your army list, at range of course. Now the Trigon isn't going to be able to charge, but maybe you're stealing an objective, because you're only getting within 3, which is really small. But yeah, that's why I like him, that's why he's in A. I think he's better than the Morlock, purely because of that ability. There's not many abilities in the game. I mean, I know Chaos Demons have all the shenanigans where they can come within 3 inches, but for Tyranids, it's very rare. And it's very useful. So I would definitely advise taking a Trigon for that ability alone. And that's why he's in A. He's not quite an auto-include, he's still quite expensive. He is just a basic monster after all. But I like the ability. Tyrant Guard is the next one. I'm going to get some flack for this. Tyrant Guard, I know what's coming. I said these were an auto-include. And after playing a lot more games with them, they're not an auto-include. I'm going to be realistic. They're not an auto-include, but they are A tier. I've given them a decent-ish score. They're 95 for 3, 194 for 6. Now what you do with them is you take them with a Hive Tyrant, you take them with a Swarm Lord, or you take them with a Neuro Tyrant. Now the problem with the Hive Tyrant and the Swarm Lord, which is something I kind of underestimated, is you're going to be lowering those models or those characters' toughness to toughness 8 because you take the majority. So when you've got a Swarm Lord that's toughness 10 and he gets into a fight and then your opponent pulls out the epic challenge stratagem and he's now into all the attacks are now going to be going onto the Swarm Lord, he's only toughness 8 all of a sudden, not toughness 10, which means lesser weapons can actually hurt him, which becomes a problem. So even though they're meant to be guarding him, there are ways of just completely bypassing the Tyrant Guard, which is a problem. Now in terms of their own use, of course that's going to be forcing your opponent to spend a CP, and that's if they can even fight and beat our Swarm Lord or Hive Tyrant. If not, you've got to go through the Tyrant Guard, which have got toughness 8 themselves, 3+ armor, 4 wounds apiece. They hit pretty decently with their Crushing Claws or Siren Talons, or their Bone Cleaver, Lash Whip and Rending Claws. They've got some decent melee options, no ranged attacks. They give the character a 5+ fear no pain save on top of that, which is quite nice, I suppose. Now they can just take the enhancement for that. That's why you can just simply ignore these and not bother taking them at all. Save the points. That's why they're not an auto-include anymore for me. But they were. Back when I did the video, they were an auto-include, and I'm just kind of sharing my experiences at the end of the day. But yeah, A tier for me. They're still good. In fact, with the Neuro Tyrant in particular, they match the toughness of toughness 8, so it works quite nicely with the Neuro Tyrant. I just personally don't take the Neuro Tyrant, so I suppose it's horses for courses on that one. Next we've got the Tyrannofex, another one that potentially could have got S tier. A few of you are probably saying this is definitely an S tier. It's 200 points, and I don't rate everything about it. Now the Rupture Cannon, a lot of you are saying I take the Rupture Cannon all the time. Amazing, amazing. 48-inch range, strength 18, -4 OP, 2d6 damage. Amazing. It's only 2 shots. That's the problem I've got with it. It only takes in 1 save to just completely ignore them. That's why I don't ever use the Rupture Cannons, even though they've got heavy and strength 18, damage is an average of 7 that goes through. That's really good, but you've got to get them to go through. In-run saves are an absolute problem. If it had like Dev Wounds, no, in fact, even if Dev Wounds was there, it wouldn't make a difference, really. That's why I don't like the Rupture Cannon. The Acid Spray, I think, is decent because you've got D6 plus 6 attacks and they're automatically hitting. And they're damage 2. So you're likely wounded on 3s against the infantry, -2 AP, damage 2. They're doing damage, and in Overwatch, they're also going to be very useful. The Fleshborer Hive, yes, you're getting loads of shots, heavy on top of that, and Twin Link, 20 shots. Statistically, they're virtually the same as they were in the last edition, even though they've got these extra abilities because you've got 10 shots less. It's anti-light infantry realistically, and then you've got the, what's the ability? It's -1 to damage. Yeah, that's okay. It's obviously very resilient. Toughness 12, 2+ armor, 16 wounds, OC 5 as well, which is helpful, especially for our backlines. But you need to then screen it. So what was the points? I did just say the points and I forgot them. 200 points, and then you probably need a screen. I just don't. I don't like it. I'm not that keen on it. I know we don't have that much in terms of range high strength, but we've got the zone tropes. I'd just rather pile all my points into the zone tropes, let them do all this kind of damage. Exocrines are probably a better monster at range than Tyrannofex in my opinion, but I've put them both in A tier. So hey ho. Last A tier option, I've got the Venomthropes. Now the Venomthropes are 70 points for 3 or 140 points for 6. They've got stealth, so it's a -1 to hit them. They're toughness 5, 4+ armor, and they're effectively just using their ability Foul Spores. So it's going to be, you're going to basically be giving the benefits of cover to units within 6, and everybody that's also within 6, excluding monsters, will have the stealth ability. So it's a -1 to hit them. So -1 to hit them with cover. That's going to help a lot of units up and keep going. They've even got anti-infantry 2+ on their weaponry. I'm not saying they should be in a fight, but they do have 5 attacks each. And if you need 2s to wound, that's not the worst. These are probably the low end of A, to be honest with you. I wouldn't put them high, low end for me. Right, so we're onto the S tier now. These are virtually the auto-include units. And we're going to start this off with the Barb Gaunts. They're 50 points for a unit of 5, 100 points for a unit of 10. That's dirt cheap for what they're about. Now what are they doing? They're only toughness 4. They've only got a 4+ armor. 2 wounds apiece. That's not great. However, they've got decent-ish weaponry. 24-inch range, attacks D6 with blast as well as heavy. Strength 5, no AP, 1 damage. That's okay. But their ability is where it's at. So they've got the Disruption Bombardment. So in your shooting phase, you're selecting an infantry unit, and when they are hit by one of these attacks, which you will be hitting with when you've got 5 of them, with blast and D6 shots, you're going to definitely get 1 hit, right? As long as it's an infantry unit, so you're going to be subtracting 2 from their movement characteristics, and then subtracting 2 from their advance and charge rolls. So all in all, you're subtracting a combined total of 6 inches if they were to use advance and charge as well as their movement. That's a seriously good play if you've got an infantry unit coming in. Now this is only going to be applying in our shooting phase, so even if you're doing this in Overwatch, that's not going to apply because that's your opponent's movement phase or your opponent's charge phase. But it has to happen in our shooting phase. But yeah, minusing 2 from the characteristic and then 2 from advance and 2 from charge. That's pretty decent. Now you can have multiple units of these, so you can do this multiple times if you've got more units. And they're also just very cheap. 50 points, that's 10 points each. For a 2 wound model, that could be a decent screen, that could do little actions. I think that's reasonable. I think that's pretty reasonable. Now, of course, they were nerfed before the Index Errata. They used to be able to do this, but you used to be able to basically split fire your weapon, so you could take all 5 and take 5 different infantry units. It used to be well overpowered. But even the way it is now, with only 1 infantry unit, that's still pretty good. I would take them as S tier. With the nerf, you could potentially go down to A+, but for me, they're still S. They're still S. Next, we've got the Biovores. The Biovores they went up, didn't they? 65 points because they got nerfed. If you take 1, you could take 2 for 130, 3 for 195. You may as well just take them in singles, to be honest with you, because you're going to be using their ability. Now, their ability is Seed Spore Mine. So in the shooting phase, each time this unit is selected to shoot, it can use this ability instead of making any attacks. And if you do so, you're adding a new Spore Mine unit anywhere on the battle that's 48 inches but more than 9 inches away from enemy units. That Spore Mine is only going to contain 1 model, but that Spore Mine can now be doing all sorts of stuff, couldn't it? It could be blowing up. Yeah, that's a bit of a waste. It could be screening. That's also a bit of a waste. Really, though, it's for the secondary objectives in the pack. If you've got Deploy Teleport Homers, the Spore Mine can do it. If you've got Investigate Signal, the Spore Mine can do it. Area Denial, the Spore Mine can do it. Cleanse, the Spore Mine can do it. There's so many things that the Spore Mines can do just by taking 1 shot from the Biovore that's safely within our own deployment zone for 65 points. Now you could just opt to shoot as normal with the Biovores. The Spine-Maw Launcher is D3 attacks with 48 inch range. It's got blast, dead wounds, heavy and indirect. strength 6 minus 1 AP, 2 damage. So if you've got no secondaries that you need to do in that turn, just fire as normal. You don't even need to have line of sight, indirect fire is there. If you've not moved, you're going to have heavy, which is going to completely take away that -1 because you're going to get a +1 as well. It is hitting on falls though, unfortunately, but you could just use the heavy side and not be indirect. You can just be direct, so it'll be hitting on 3s. But yeah, overall they're pretty good. They can also explode very similar to the Pyrovore, so you've got to be careful if you're taking units that have got multiple models in them. But realistically, I would take them in singles because then you can make multiple spore mines. If you've got 3 in one unit, you're only going to be creating 1 spore mine, and you're going to be foregoing the shooting of 3 Pyrovores. Whereas if you take 3 individual units, you can create 3 spore mines, or you can do 1 spore mine and then 2 can fire as normal. So by putting them in one unit, you're kind of hindering yourself, so always separate them where you can. Definitely an S tier unit for me, auto include. You probably only need a couple, don't need any more than that in my opinion. Really good unit. Next we've got one of the big boys, it's the Hive Tyrant. Not the winged variant, this is now the normal one on foot, which is slightly tougher because it's got toughness 10, 2+ armor, 4+ invan. It's got the 10 wounds. You can pretty much kit him out how you want. He's got Synapse, of course, Will of the Hive Mind, so you've got that free strat use within 12 inches. And he's also got Onslaught, which is pretty good and underrated in my opinion. For any units within 6 inches gain Assault, so they can advance and still fire. That's going to rapidly get your models up the battlefield. Zone Throats, for example. If you want to get them into range, they can advance and still fire. Anything realistic, anything can have the Assault keyword if they're within 6 inches of the Hive Tyrant. Yeah, pretty decent beat stick, pretty tough, pretty tanky. He can take Tyrant Guard, although as we mentioned earlier, it's going to hinder your toughness slightly to toughness 8. But you've also got the option of enhancements because it's just a character, it's not an epic hero. And the enhancement I would definitely be looking at is the Adaptive Biology for the 5+ Fear No Pain save, and it can turn into a 4+ Fear No Pain save as soon as you lose a wound, which is pretty good. But yeah, definitely think about taking one of these. I would take him personally over the Swarm Lord, but realistically I'm taking both. Going down the list, we've got the Gargoyles. The Gargoyles are another underrated unit, and they're battle line as well, so you can actually take 6 units of these if you wanted to. 75 points for 10, 150 points for 20. I think that's fairly cheap. They can be led by Winged Tyranid Prime to give them sustained hits 1. If you wanted to, I wouldn't bother. They're there for scoring realistically, not for doing damage. Although the damage department is okay. 18-inch range with Assault. Strength 5, no AP, 1 damage. So Strength 5 is actually quite tasty for a battle line unit. With the Endless Multitude keyword, so you can be using that strat to bring them back as well. They're moving 12 inches, they've got Assault, so they're advancing on top of that. But what's great about them is their Winged Swarm ability. So in the shooting phase, after they've made their shots, as long as they're not within engagement range, they can make a normal move up to 6 inches, and then they're not able to charge. But that's 12-inch movement, you're going to then advance, potentially up to 6, isn't it? So that could be up to 8, that could be 18 right there. And then another 6 on top of that, that's 24 inches potentially of movement from one unit. So they're really good for scoring your secondary objectives, engage on all fronts, behind enemy lines, capture enemy outposts, because they've got OC too as well. So they can easily get hold of an enemy outpost, and that's, what's that, 8 victory points? So that's, yeah, they can be easily taken over objectives. Yes, they will go down pretty quick. They've only got toughness 3 with a 6+ armor, 1 wound. They will go down, but they're going to be scoring points, and they're only, what, 75 points did we say? 75 points for 10, 150 points for 20. That's good. That's really good, really cheap, and definitely usable. Next, we've got the Horus Vex. I think I gave this thing a 4-star rating if I'm correct, but I didn't realise in comparison to the other models how cheap this actually is, and that's why I bumped this up in this tier list. So the Horus Vex, get the points out, I believe it's 125 if I'm not mistaken, 125 points. He's pretty much the monster, got the monster stats, toughness 11, 3+ armor, 14 wounds. There's no invuln, but none of them really do. He's got a precision ability at range, it's only 1 shot, but if you do get it off, it's D6+1. So you've got a chance of just killing a character just like that, which is really nice. The melee weapon, you've got 14 attacks at strength 7, -1 AP, 2 damage, so it's just eating Space Marines for fun. You've got 4 extra attacks at strength 14, D6+1 damage. You're forcing Battle Shock on top of that. I think they're just doing a lot of work. Comparable to the Screamer Killers, but 125 points versus 180 points. Easy winner realistically. Yeah, definitely an S tier rated unit in my opinion. 125 points, you get a couple of these. Get a couple of these and just run them up the flanks. On to the Neurogons, which is another new unit. The Neurogons are 45 points or 90 points. Now someone's going to have to tell me, what are the Neurogaunt node beasts? I don't quite see what the benefit is, but either way, let's ignore that for a moment. They're basically doing nothing. They're doing nothing. 45 points for 11 models, it says. 11 models, I'm presuming that means 10 and then you get a free beast. Is that what it means? That's probably what it means. Yeah, so you're basically getting a free model. So you get 10 Neurogaunts and then you get a node beast with it. So it's effectively 11 models for 45 points. Let's do the quick maths on that. I say I'm doing quick maths, the calculator's doing the quick maths. No, I don't want to update my iPhone, go away. 45 divided by 11. 4.09, basically 4 points a model. Now, they're only toughness 3, they're only 1 wound, 6 plus armor. They're not doing a lot. They're providing synapse, which is quite nice, as long as they're within synapse. So they're just giving you an extension to your synapse. But realistically, they're a screen, a dirt cheap screen. They're also going to be an action unit. They could be, but yeah, realistically, they're screening off your things like your exocrine, your Tyrannofexes, even your zone throats. You don't want them getting caught in melee. They're doing the actions, they're doing the screening deep strike as well in your own deployment zone, and providing some extra synapse. They've actually got the endless multitude keyword, which I've only just noticed, so you can be bringing them back quite easily as well. I mean, they are gaunts after all. They're not doing much in terms of damage, they've only got 1 attack each, but 45 points for 11. Whereas the what's cheaper than that? I'd probably say the Rippers. Let's have a look at the Rippers. The Rippers are 35 points for 3, but they've got 4, so 4, 8, 12. Yeah, I mean, the Rippers are toughness 2, and they've got no OC. These guys have got OC 1. So they are definitely better than Rippers in that aspect, and you get quite a lot of them. So in terms of the footprint as well, it's just going to be much better. So they're definitely going to be up there in the S tier. Raveners are next, one of my little favourites. I've been raving about the Raveners, and they are 75 points for 3, 150 points for 6. Now I love the Raveners because of their ability, Death from Below. Very under the radar ability. At the end of your opponent's turn, if you're not within engagement range, you literally take them off the battlefield, and then you're going to be bringing them in your own movement phase, which is just about to come up. So you're effectively redeploying them. Now the only downside to that is, of course, you're going to miss the command phase, so if they're on an objective, you're not going to be scoring with them. But it's at the end of your opponent's turn, so you're not going to be missing out on secondaries realistically. But yeah, you're just missing out on primaries effectively. But yeah, you can come back in, your deep strike in 9 inches. No, in fact, it's strategic reserves, isn't it? No, take that back again. You go into strategic reserves, but you've also got the deep strike ability. So if you go into the, where was it? The rules commentary FAQ, you'll find that units that have got the deep strike ability that get placed back into strategic reserves can actually come back with deep strike again. A lot of people have missed that and been asking about it. So you're deep striking virtually every single turn. It could either be turn 4, turn 5. So whatever secondary objective you pull, you've seen it by now, because it's your command phase. When you do this, you get your card and it says, hey, investigate signal. Okay, my Raveners are going to come in and they're going to do that. Next card, behind enemy lines. My Raveners are going to come in and they're going to do that. They can do virtually almost any card that relates to getting in a certain location, potentially getting onto objectives. Sometimes you have to fight your into objectives, which isn't as easy. And of course, they're not going to be doing things like bring it down. That's not their game. But there's a lot of secondary cards that you need to score or need to at least get rid of. And this is the kind of unit that will do this. We've got, in the Necrons Codex, we've got a very similar thing with the Phidian Destroyers. They're also very under the radar. Not many people understand that it's not all about the damage, it's about the secondary objectives. Because even if it's not scoring you a lot of points, if you don't score the card, if you don't actually complete the card that turn, you're going to be holding it, unless you actually get rid of it, of course, and then you gain a CP. But what if you've got another dead card? You can only do it with one of them, unless you're using a CP at the start of your turn, but then that's a whole different element, isn't it? So really, you don't want to be left with this card in your next turn. You want to get rid of it, whether you're binning it off or whether you're scoring it. And the best way, of course, is to score it. So for me, they're a top tier, S tier rated unit, and we've not even really broke into the data card, just the abilities. They're moving 10 inches, so even if you're not doing that death from below ability, they're just moving 10 inches naturally. Toughness 5. The weaponry is okay. I mean, they've got range attacks. It's light anti-infantry at best, and the melee weapons, they're not bad. 7 attacks each. Strength 5, -1 AP, 1 damage with twin links. So it's doing a decent amount of work. Again, it's light infantry. You're removing screens or anything that's trying to guard an objective that's relatively cheap. They can do this kind of job. Definitely an S tier for me. Let's move into the next one, which is the Swarm Lord. Swarm Lord is effectively your named Hive Tyrant. He's an epic hero, so he cannot be taking any enhancements. So if you are taking the Tyrant Guard, he's pretty much got the same stats as the Hive Tyrant. He's got a range attack with the Synaptic Pulse, which is pretty good, and the Bone Sabers are also pretty good. They're very similar to the Hive Tyrant. His abilities are slightly different though. Instead of letting you use a free stratagem with Will of the Hive Mind, he's instead got Hive Commander, so you just simply gain a CP every single bat round. There's a pro and a con to that versus the Hive Tyrant's ability. The pro is you get to use that CP on any unit in your entire army because the Will of the Hive Mind ability is within 12 inches, whereas this could be at the other end of the battlefield. As long as it's in your CP pool, you can spend it, right? However, Will of the Hive Mind, you could use that on stratagems that cost 2 command points and turn them into 0. So you can gain benefits from that. This thing's also got the Malign Presence, which is going to be increasing the stratagem cost to your opponent by 1 command point, which is a very strong ability this edition. Super, super strong. Again, I always bring Necrons out here, but if you go up against my Necrons, the Undying Legion's protocol, the stratagem, you're going to make that 2 CP rather than 1 CP, so every time I want to reanimate in your turn, it's costing me 2 command points. That becomes very pricey, and there's lots of other stratagems within the game that you can make very pricey and make your opponent think twice about using. And the third ability is you've got 9-inch synapse rather than 6-inch. So the Swarm Lord, I always sort of change my mind on a daily basis. What's better, the Hive Tyrant, the Swarm Lord? The Swarm Lord is pretty good, but because I can't make up my mind, I just simply say why not take both. You've still got both the ability. You still gain a CP with the Swarm Lord. You can still use a stratagem for free with the Hive Tyrant. You're going to be up in CP, which means you can start spending and doing lots of other good stuff. In terms of his actual points though, let's just double check. The Swarm Lord, in fact, where's the Hive Tyrant first? The Hive Tyrant we said was 220 points, and the Swarm Lord is 250, so it's for 30 points more. But you are of course probably going to take an enhancement on your Tyrant, so they're going to be almost equal. And then on to the final unit within this tier group and this entire video, in fact, is the Zoanthropes. Probably our best unit, in fact. This isn't actually ordered in terms of the actual tier, but I think the Zoanthropes are probably the best unit. 3 points, 3 models, 90 points. It would be great if it's 3 points, but 90 points for 3 models, 180 points for 6. Just take 6 in a unit because they're that good. Let's get their profile up without making that noise. Zoanthropes. What have we got? We've got toughness 5, we've got a 5+ armor with a 4+ invuln, 3 wounds apiece. And they were what? I just said it and I forgot. They're basically 30 points a model. They've got synapse, show them in the warp as well. Their abilities, you've got, if your Neurothrope is alive, which is basically the leader now of the unit, doesn't have any extra abilities, but if he is alive and your opponent fails a battle shock within 6 inches, we're going to regain D3 lost wounds, and you're going to throw out D3 wounds as well. So you can start stacking that up with a load of abilities. Those abilities that we mentioned in this video were, the -1 to the leadership test and all that kind of stuff. You can start to stack this stuff up. You've also got the warp, they've got the warp field aura, which is a 6+ invulnerable save for units within 6. Another layer of defense. Maybe you want to add the psychophage for the 6+ Funo pain save, so you can have a 6+ invuln and a 6+ Funo pain save for all units within 6. That could be quite a nice bit of defense. But really it's all about their range weaponry. Warp Blast, this is where it's at. 24-inch range, it's not the best range, but they are infantry, so they can get into ruins and stuff and pop out, shoot. It's got Blast, well, one of the profiles has Blast. There's 2 profiles, you've got the normal Witchfire and a Focus Witchfire. The normal one, Blast, D3 attacks each with Blast, each. Bear in mind you could have 6 of these models, all with Blast, each. Bliss skill 3+, strength 7 minus 2 AP, D3 damage. That's the weaker profile. Bearing in mind you could take an Exocrim, get them to reroll hit rolls over 1. Their focus Witchfire. Now you lose blast here, but you gain lethal hits. Only 1 shot each, so you've got 6 hits, or 6 shots. One of them will probably be a lethal hit on average. Strength 12 minus 3 AP, D6 plus 1 damage. So a pretty tidy strength in terms of range attacks really. It's only, what is it that's better than that? You've got the Tyranid is better than that. But when you've got 6 of these, and you can have 3 units of them, so you can have effectively 18 Zone Throats. Yes, 18 Zone Throats is quite expensive. It's 180 points for 6, times that by 3. 540 points to get you 18 of these guys with the in-run saves. Throwing out all that range attacks, all that range damage. I think that's pretty good. Giving out the in-run saves, potentially throwing out mortal wounds with the battle shock, regaining wounds. Yeah, a great unit to have. And their infantry as well, so you can simply just hide them in cover. So yeah guys, that is my big index tier list, I suppose, for the Tyranids. Now of course we are going to be getting our codex at some point. I don't know when the exact date is. If you know, let me know down in the comments below. So we're going to have to wait and see what kind of high fleets we get in the codex. I don't know what to expect really. Are we going to get some sort of gaunt high fleets? Are we going to get some monster mash? I don't really know. Maybe something melee, maybe something shooty, but yeah. If I've got anything in this tier list massively wrong, let me know down in the comments below. Also, if there's anything right, just give me a thumbs up, and yeah, cool. But yeah, guys, make sure you are subscribed on your exits. Thank you all for watching. See you in the next one.